Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. Today, we're stepping back in time, back to the Delhi Sultanate period. We're talking 13th to the 16th centuries. And we're going to explore what city life was like in places like Delhi, Agra, and Lahore. We've got some pretty cool sources for this one, too. Historical accounts, architecture studies. We even have some personal memoirs from emperors.
Yeah, it's amazing what you can learn when you can pull from all those different perspectives. It really puts you in the moment, like walking those streets, shopping in those markets. You can almost get to know the personalities of the rulers who shaped these cities.
I know. I was reading about Babur's memoirs, and he's surprisingly poetic, especially when he talks about his gardens.
And Akbar's palaces. I mean, they really say a lot about him as a leader, don't they?
That's such a good point. It wasn't just about building stuff. They really used urban planning to project their vision, values, even their power.
Right. So why don't we start with Delhi?
The heart of the Sultanate. Yeah, let's start there.
Okay, so where do we even begin? I guess the Quwwat al-Islam Mosque. It really shows that mix of Indian and Islamic architectural styles.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But is there anything about it that makes it really stand out?
So most mosques from this period are built with arches and vaults, right? But this one uses a traditional Indian post and lintel system.
That's the one with columns and beams, right?
Exactly. It was really common in Indian temple architecture, and it gives this mosque a very distinctive look. You don't see anything else like it, really, in the Islamic world.
It sounds beautiful.
It is, and it's like they were adapting those existing building practices to new purposes. It really shows how much cultural exchange was happening during this period.
I mean, they weren't just trying to impose a new style, were they? It's more like they were blending and adapting.
Exactly, and I think that says a lot about the Sultanate period as a whole.
Yeah. So Agra, then.
Okay, so Agra. Everyone immediately thinks about the Taj Mahal, right?
Of course.
But Agra was already a big deal, even back during the Sultanate era. I mean, even Babur loved it.
Oh, yeah, he talks about it in his memoirs, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. And not only did he admire it, he actually shaped the city, too. Like, he built the Garden of Victory there.
After a major military victory.
You know it. A bit of a power move, don't you think?
Maybe just a little. But tell me about the Garden of Victory. What made it special? Or even other gardens from this period, like Rambagh.
Okay, so think about those Persian garden design principles, right?
Intricate water channels, symmetry.
Exactly. A real focus on creating this harmony between nature and architecture. And it wasn't just about beauty, it was deeper than that. They were expressing this whole philosophy about humanity's connection with the natural world.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So powerful how they were expressing such big ideas through these projects.
And speaking of that, we've got to talk about Lahore. It shows us a whole different dynamic.
Okay, Lahore. What's going on there?
Well, Akbar, he made some big additions to the Lahore Fort. But later on, rulers would replace them with their own buildings.
So were they just, like, trying to one-up each other? What was going on there?
It's hard to say, really. I mean, on the one hand, it's about showing off their power, leaving a legacy, you know. But they also had to change things to reflect new ceremonies and practices at court. So trying to figure out what some of those early palace areas were even used for, well, it's like solving a puzzle.
Like a historical puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
So interesting how these buildings can tell us so much about architecture, about who had power, even about culture.
Absolutely. But, you know, it's easy to focus on those fancy palaces and mosques. But what about the people who actually lived in those cities?
You're so right. We've got to talk about the people. Yeah. The everyday people, the merchants, the artisans, the workers. What can you tell us about their lives?
Well, picture this. Bustling markets, these vibrant trade routes. Imagine all sorts of different communities bumping into each other every day.
A real melting pot.
Exactly. You can even see that mixing in the architecture. Like the Ganesh pole and the Jai Mandir and the Amber Fort. They blend Mughal and Rajput styles in this really beautiful way.
Yeah, we've been seeing that blending everywhere, haven't we? It makes you wonder, what was it like to actually walk through these cities? To see that cultural fusion happening all around you.
Oh, I know, right? Think about it. The smells, the sounds of those marketplaces, the silks, the spices from far away, craftsmen showing off their skills. It must have been incredible. A total sensory overload.
Yeah, but getting around back then must have been tough. I mean, the distances, the dangers. Was there anything that made traveling and trading a little safer?
Well, that's where the Saras come in.
Ah, yes, the Sarais. Tell us more about those those roadside inns.
So they weren't just simple rest stops, you know. They were built along major trade routes like the one between Delhi and Agra. They were designed to offer travelers a safe place to rest, to restock, even do business. They were these really active hubs, a
Sure.
really big part of the social and economic life of the empire.
So it sounds like they were essential for connecting people and goods across those long distances.
Exactly. And, you know, a lot of them were built during Jahangir's reign. And a lot of that was thanks to influential people like the Queen Mother. She was really big on promoting trade.
So they weren't just built randomly. There were economic and political reasons behind them.
Oh, absolutely. The rulers, they understood
Hmm,
that a strong trade network meant stability and prosperity for the whole realm.
smart. It really sounds like these cities were so dynamic, centers of trade and innovation and culture. But what about that cultural side of things?
Right.
What was it like to experience art and architecture and religion in these Sultanate cities?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. One of the things that really stands out to me is how much art and architecture were supported by the rulers. It wasn't just about having palaces and mosques. You know, they were making a statement.
Oh, I see what you mean. Like each one had to be bigger and better than the last. They were trying to leave their mark.
Exactly. And if you look at the sources, you can see how much these rulers were personally involved. Oh, yeah. Take Jahangir, for example. His memoirs show how much he loved design, especially gardens. He even added his own little touches to some of the projects.
Wow, so we can get a glimpse of his personality through his writing.
We really can. And it goes beyond just gardens. You can see how curious he was about the world. He was fascinated by art, by nature. It's a side you don't always see with powerful rulers.
Yeah, it really humanizes them, doesn't it?
Yeah,
They weren't just these distant figures. They were people with passions just like us.
absolutely. And when you look at the religious architecture from this time, I mean, the mosques, the temples, the tombs, you can see how much cultural fusion and innovation was happening. It's like these different religious traditions were talking to each other through the buildings themselves.
I love that idea. But what do you mean? Can you give me a specific example? How did that conversation show up in these buildings?
Well, look at the Jami Masjid in Fatehpur Sikri. All that intricate marble inlay, those painted decorations, it's incredible. The skill of those artists is just mind-blowing.
It sounds beautiful.
Oh, it is. And it really shows that blending of cultures that was happening at the time.
It seems like all these palaces and gardens, they weren't just about showing off wealth and power. They were designed to evoke certain emotions and ideas.
Absolutely. They were filled with symbolism. For example, the charbags.
Those are those formal gardens divided into 4 sections by waterways, right?
Right. They took inspiration from Timurid designs from Central Asia, and they show this deeper connection to ideas of paradise and the cosmos.
Wow, so they weren't just making random design choices. There was a whole philosophy behind it.
Exactly. And that Timurid influence also links back to those bigger trends in Indian history. You know, it shows how ideas and styles traveled and changed over time.
It's all connected. And we can't forget about the Sufi shrines and the Chishti order. They had a big impact on the cities too, right?
You're absolutely right. The Chishti order, they were a Sufi mystical tradition. They played a huge role in the spiritual life of these cities. Their shrines became places for pilgrimage, places for people to gather. It really adds to the richness of the urban landscape.
Okay, so we've covered a lot. The palaces, the gardens, but what about the people who weren't part of the elite? What were their lives actually like?
That's the question, isn't it? And sadly, the sources don't always tell us much about the everyday lives of ordinary people.
It must be hard to piece it all together.
It really is. We don't have their diaries or anything like that, but we can still get a glimpse into their lives. Think about it. Waking up in a crowded neighborhood, the city already alive around you.
Right.
Maybe you're a weaver, starting your day at the loom, hearing that familiar clacking sound. Or perhaps you're a merchant, getting your stall ready at the marketplace, hoping for a good day.
I can almost imagine it. The smells of spices, people shouting their prices, the energy.
It must have been quite a scene. But of course, it wasn't always easy. There were challenges, too.
Right. Like what?
Well, sometimes there wasn't enough food. Disease would break out, and living in such close quarters, there was always a risk of fire.
That sounds scary. And I imagine just trying to make ends meet must have been a struggle.
It definitely was. Making sure your family had enough food and a place to live was a constant worry.
So did they have anything to help them get through those tough times, like maybe community groups or religious organizations?
Oh, the community was really important. They had guilds for the artisans and merchants. They would offer training, set prices, even help out in tough times. Religious institutions would give out alms and offer spiritual support. And in those neighborhoods, people really relied on each other, sharing what they had and looking out for one another. It created a sense of togetherness.
It's amazing to think about how they supported each other through those hard times. And I guess they still found ways to have fun, right? Even with those everyday struggles.
Oh, for sure. Festivals were a big deal. They offered a chance to escape the daily grind, enjoy some music, watch some performances, and connect with people. We even have descriptions of these elaborate processions, markets springing up in the streets, and storytelling that would keep people captivated.
Sounds pretty lively.
It was. And those moments of celebration, they really helped to build that sense of community and gave everyone a break from the pressures of city life.
So we've talked about the architecture, the markets, the social networks, the festivals. It sounds like these cities were a blend of everything.
They really were. It was this mix of rulers' ambitions, merchants' goals, artisans' skills, and the everyday people just trying to get by. And while each city was unique, they were all part of this shared human experience, this constant interaction between individuals and the forces that shape urban life. It happens everywhere, across time and cultures.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
And it makes you realize how much we can learn from studying these cities. It's not just about dates and names. It's about understanding what it means to be human, what it means to live among others.
Exactly. By looking at the past, we can learn so much about our present. The problems these cities faced, like inequality, social mobility, the need for community, there's still issues we face today, maybe even more so now that so many people live in cities.
It's true. The world has changed a lot, but those basic human needs and desires, they haven't really gone away.
Nope. And that's why it's so important to understand these historical patterns, these basic truths about city life. It can help us as we build the cities of the future.
I never thought of it that way. So what comes next? We've talked about the big picture of architecture, religion, and trade. But I want to know more about the personal stories, the everyday lives of the people who lived in these cities. What were their routines like? How did they interact with each other? What were their hopes and dreams?
Now, that's a question that takes us right to the heart of urban life, and it's something we're going to explore more in the next part of our deep dive.
All right, so let's get back to those personal stories. It's easy to get caught up in the grand scale of things, the palaces, the planning. But those people who lived in those cities, what were their lives really like?
It's a good question, a tough one to answer sometimes. I mean, these people didn't leave behind memoirs or fancy tombs for us to study, but we can still find clues, little pieces of their lives. Imagine yourself waking up in a packed neighborhood, the sounds of the city all around you. Maybe you're a weaver starting your day at the loom, that clacking sound filling the air. Or maybe you're setting up your stall at the market hoping for a busy day.
I can almost picture it. The colors, the smells, all those people. But it wasn't always easy, was it? What about those everyday challenges?
You're right, life was tough. There were times when food was scarce, disease outbreaks, and with all those wooden buildings so close together, fires were a constant threat.
And on top of all that, they had to worry about making enough money to survive.
Exactly. Putting food on the table, keeping a roof over their heads, that was always on their minds.
So did they have any support systems? Like, were there community groups or religious institutions that helped out?
The community was essential. Artisans and merchants had guilds. They provided training, set fair prices, and helped each other out when times were hard. Religious institutions offered charity and spiritual guidance. And within the neighborhoods, people relied on each other, sharing what they had, looking out for one another.
It's remarkable how they came together, how they found strength in those tough times. And they still managed to find ways to have fun. Right?
Oh, definitely. Festivals were a big deal, a chance to escape the everyday routine, enjoy some music and performances, connect with people. There were elaborate processions, markets would pop up in the streets, and stories would be told that would keep people on the edge of their seats.
Sounds like they knew how to celebrate.
They did. Those celebrations really brought people together. They offered a break from the stresses of city life.
It's incredible. The architecture, the markets, the social connections, the celebrations, they all fit together to create this picture of life in the Delhi Sultanate.
It's a complex picture, a mix of ambition, opportunity, resilience. Each city was unique, but they all shared that human experience. The way individuals and larger forces shape urban life. It's a story that repeats itself throughout history in different cultures.
It's fascinating, and it makes you think about how much we can learn from the past. It's not just about history. It's about understanding what it means to be human.
Exactly. When we study the past, we can understand our present better, those challenges they faced, inequality, finding a place in society, building a sense of community. We're still dealing with them today, maybe even more so as our cities keep growing.
The world has changed so much, but those basic human needs, they remain the same.
That's right. And understanding those patterns, those enduring truths about urban life, well, that's crucial as we build the cities of tomorrow.
It's an important lesson. Well, thank you for taking us on this journey. Back to the Delhi Sultanate, to those incredible cities. We hope you've enjoyed this deep dive, and we encourage you to keep exploring. Read those historical accounts, dive into the details, and imagine yourself walking those bustling streets, experiencing those sights and sounds and stories that make this period of history so captivating.